Hey guys, welcome back. This is gonna be part 2 of what if Yuji was like Garou from One Punch Man. Continuing where we left off, Yuji would just be about to fight the Finger Bearer curse. Just as he finished his fight with Megami, he would tell the curse to bring it. Just then, the curse would rush in, immediately attacking Yuji. It would swing down, throwing an overhead punch towards Yuji. Yuji would then parry the attack. Then, he would attempt to throw in an attack of his own, going for the kick onto the curse's midsection. Just as the kick would connect, Yuji would be surprised. The curse's body was extremely hard. The finger bearer would then smile and unleash a devastating blast of cursed energy. Yuji would get blown back, being tossed across the room, but he would regain his footing almost immediately. But just as Yuji would look up, he would see the finger bearer right in front of him, throwing a punch straight towards his gut. Yuji would not have time to react. The punch would connect, and with it connecting, the punch would have caved Yuji's stomach in, causing him to cough up blood. It would push Yuji back again, but instead of backing down, Yuji would simply smile. He was going to get stronger, and he was going to show everybody. Yuji's cursed energy would begin to flare, and he would rush back in at the finger bearer. Yuji would throw 5 quick jabs. Even though they weren't doing a lot of damage to the finger bearer, they were still pushing him back. He would throw punch after punch, each one seemingly harder than the last. Even still, the finger bearer was barely budging. Yuji was barely doing any damage to it. The finger bearer would then take a step back. Using the same leg that it had leapt off of, it would use it to push back forward towards Yuji. It would send a kick straight towards Yuji, with Yuji attempting to block the attack. Yuji would successfully block, but the attack was still devastating to him. Even while blocking, the attack would have sent Yuji into a wall, and without a second to catch his breath, the finger bearer was already launching a wave of cursed energy straight at Yuji. Yuji would look at it and smile, getting hit directly with the cursed energy. He would think to himself, so this is a special grade. Being flung into rubble, Yuji would get up, crawling his way out of the rubble. The finger bearer would be laughing and jumping as if it was toying with Yuji. Yuji would lock eyes with it and growl. Sukuna inside of Yuji would then ask him if that was really all he had. If he wants to gain more power, he needs to be greedy. As greedy as he can get, he would then tell Yuji that if he were to die here, he was unworthy of doing anything. All of his ideals were absolutely worth shit. Yuji would begin to laugh. The soft laugh would turn into a hearty laugh, until Yuji was laughing maniacally. With the finger bearer saying this, he would be confused. Just then, Yuji would say, I just need to be greedy, right? Yuji would rush back in at the finger bearer, pushing out the most cursed energy he's ever pushed out before. He would still be laughing, going in for an attack. He would spear a left hook straight towards the curse's cheek. The punch would connect, knocking the cursed spirit back a little bit, but the cursed spirit would retaliate with its own attack. He would send a fist of his own, colliding with Yuji's face, but instead of being knocked back this time, Yuji would take it, pushing his head directly into the curse's fist. Still laughing, the curse would be confused as why his attacks weren't working all of a sudden. But Yuji wasn't letting up. He would keep throwing punch after punch. Even while taking hits, he would simply be laughing. Just then, inside of Yuji, Sukuna would begin to think, whatever's going on with this kid is crazy. It's like he's adapting to everything, and his growth rate is absolutely insane. Just a moment ago, this curse was beating him senseless, and now he's standing toe-to-toe with it. It won't be long before he eventually surpasses this curse. Sukuna would begin to grin ear to ear, excited to see what this kid had to show. He would then say, Yuji Itadori, show me what you can do. The curse in Yuji would continue going back and forth, with every one of Yuji's punches getting stronger and stronger, his speed getting faster. In the beginning, the curse was absolutely annihilating him, and right now, the curse could barely touch him. The curse would try to back up, trying to attempt to blast Yuji with another cursed energy wave. It would shoot the wave towards Yuji. However, Yuji would dig his hands into the ground and rip the rubble up, using it as a shield. Yuji would then kick the rubble in two, throwing one of the halves at the cursed spirit. While doing this, Yuji would sprint forward. The cursed spirit would blast away the rubble. However, Yuji was right behind it. First would be 2 quick jabs, as the curse would attempt to swing an overhead punch on Yuji. But Yuji would dodge it, dropping down and sending a kick towards the curse's face. The kick would connect, making the curse spin. Yuji would follow up the kick with a lethal combo, with every punch having a lot more weight than the last. Yuji would be unrelenting, laughing the entire time. Both the cursed spirit and Sukuna could feel it. Fighting with his life on the line, Yuji had unlocked something, and with Sukuna's motivation, Yuji would have forced his body to evolve. It didn't matter what the curse did. Every time it would attempt to adapt to what Yuji was doing, Yuji would simply adapt faster. Out of desperation, the finger bearer would then attempt to grab onto Yuji, going for an all or nothing attack. Yuji would simply smile harder. Catching the cursed spirit off guard, he would begin to bite down, gnawing into the cursed spirit's shoulder. He would take a massive chunk off of the curse's shoulder, with the cursed spirit letting him go out of pure fear. Yuji would look back up at the cursed spirit. As he was chewing the shoulder of the cursed spirit, Yuji would swallow it and call the finger bearer absolutely disgusting. As he would wipe the curse's blood from his mouth, he would say that he was going to finish it. He would rush forward, hitting the curse with yet another crazy combo, ending the combo off with a black flash, blowing a hole straight through the curse, exorcising it right then and there. As the curse would be exorcised, Yuji would see 2 fingers fall out of the cursed spirit. He would pick them up immediately and scarf them down. Yuji would then remember about the boy he was fighting. Before the finger bearer curse intervened between both of them, he would go back over and see the boy was still unconscious. He would bend down to check if the boy was still alive. However, just as he was about to, a nail would fly directly towards Yuji, with him barely dodging out of the way. Kugisaki would tell Yuji to stay the hell away from Megami, with Yuji telling her that he wasn't the one that did this to him. He low-key saved his life. Yuji would tell Kugisaki that he wouldn't hurt her, but for her to just stay out of his way. He would be taking his leave, and she'd better not follow him. She should take that boy to go get treated, because he's probably going to die if she doesn't. Yuji would walk the other way, as Kugisaki would rush in to check if Megami was okay, grabbing him. She would then scream at Yuji, telling him that the next time they saw each other, he would die. Yuji would simply laugh and continue on his way. Nobara would pick up Megami and begin heading outside on their way to Ijichi to report to him about what had happened inside of the detention center. Kugisaki would report to Ijichi, telling him that there was another boy in there, around the same age as them. Megami had gotten into a fight with the boy. However, a special grade curse had intervened in the middle of their fight, causing Megami to be knocked out. After that, the special grade curse begun its battle with the boy. The boy won the fight, however, it seemed as if he was heavily damaged, according to Nobara. Ijichi would thank Nobara, telling her that she did good and all they needed to do was rest now. The grown-ups would take care of everything now. They would get back to the school, and Ijichi would report this to the principal, with Gojo being present. Gojo would tell the principal that he remembers a kid back at the night parade of 100 demons, the one that killed Nanami. It would seem as if the kid had gotten stronger. Asking the principal what he thinks the kid was doing at the detention center, Principal Yaga wouldn't be sure, but would ask Gojo to investigate, since they didn't want to afford losing one of their freshmen. After everything that had happened, Yuji would have been walking with Kenjaku and a group of cursed spirits. They would be walking, as they would be plotting on how to locate more of Sukuna's fingers. Yuji would tell Kenjaku that some of the Jujutsu sorcerers might have some, seeing as they are special grade objects. Kenjaku would agree, saying that they would need to devise a plan so that they would be able to infiltrate and steal more of Sukuna's fingers for Yuji to digest. But they would need to figure out how to go about it with Gojo Satoru still in the picture. Just then, the cursed spirit with the volcano-looking figure on his head would say, they don't need to render Satoru Gojo useless. He would just take care of him himself. Kenjaku would tell Jogo that that's a stupid idea, and he'll most likely get himself killed. This is when Yuji would ask, how exactly strong is Gojo Satoru? Kenjaku would tell Yuji that if Gojo really wanted to, he can kill all of them at this table right now, with zero worries at all. Yuji would be kinda shocked, hearing that someone was that strong, saying that it was kinda unfair. A mouth would then form on Yuji's cheek. Sukuna would tell the entire group that they were all weak, plotting tactics and devising cowardice moves. Kenjaku would then tell Sukuna that he wasn't a coward, he was just playing smart. He would do the same thing if Sukuna was the one they were facing as well. Sukuna would scoff and disappear back into Yuji. Kenjaku would then say that they planned on using the prison realm in order to capture Gojo, and he has an entire plan for that, so he would tell Jogo to simply be patient. Just then, Jogo would tell Kenjaku how about they make a deal. If he was able to kill Gojo Satoru, he wanted the prison realm for himself. As like an antique, Kenjaku would tell Jogo that it was stupid of him to try, but he could go for it if he really wanted to, telling Jogo that he would die in the process if he did. He would tell Kenjaku that they are the true humans, and he wants to show that he has a dominant position over the humans. Kenjaku would laugh and tell Jogo that he can go for it, but again, he will die in the process. Jogo would take the deal and say that he'll be right back. Just then, Sukuna would begin to talk to Yuji. Inside of Sukuna's innate domain, he would tell Yuji that he was disappointed. He thought he would see a lot of great things come from him. However, he's gathered with these weaker curses. Instead of sitting here with these guys, why don't you go do things by yourself? In order to become strong, you need to be greedy, and that means not relying on these people. Yuji would begin to think for a second. Sukuna would then tell Yuji that he'll make him a deal. He would tell Yuji that he wants to make a binding vow with him. Sukuna would help Yuji's growth and help him out from time to time. But the second Yuji is to gather all 20 of his fingers, he wants to be freed so he can wreak havoc on everything, just as he used to in the Heian era. Yuji would ask Sukuna, how does he know that he's not trying to trick him, just to do things only for him? Sukuna would explain to Yuji that a binding vow is a pact made with Jujutsu that cannot be broken, or else he would be punished. Yuji would still be skeptical about Sukuna and begin to ponder even more. Sukuna would then tell Yuji, ever since he swallowed the fingers, he's been absorbing Sukuna's cursed energy, so not only does he have his own technique, Sukuna's technique would be ingrained into his body eventually. And when that time comes, Sukuna will teach him even then. Sukuna would tell him that he was simply interested in his growth. Since he was trapped inside of this body, and all he could do was spectate, he wanted to at least have fun spectating, not watching some weak brat throw his fist around like a toddler. Yuji would look at Sukuna, accepting the binding vow. Sukuna would smile, saying very nice. Things will be getting very exciting in the near future. As some time would pass, Yuji would end up disappearing from Kenjaku's group, going off to do his own thing, training under Sukuna, while also killing as many curses as he could to get stronger. At the same time, over at the Jujutsu High School, after Megami's devastating loss to Yuji, and Nobara realizing that she wasn't any help to Megami, or couldn't do anything, even while Yuji was heavily weakened, they would both resolve themselves and say that they needed to get as strong as they could. Just then, Gojo would run into the two students training and tell them that he was going to send them on a mission. He wants them to go with Ijichi to investigate some deaths that they believe to be done by some random cursed spirits. Gojo would say that he would go, however, he has something that popped up, so he was going to send them two on the mission while he goes and deals with whatever he has to deal with. As the two freshmen would group with Ijichi, he would begin to explain to them there had been a cursed spirit that was mutilating bodies beyond recognition. They would need to figure out who the cursed spirit was before it could hurt anybody else. While the Jujutsu freshmen would have been dealing with that, Yuji would have overheard that a cursed spirit was roaming about, and it was pretty strong. Things had been getting boring recently for Yuji. Even though he was still training with Sukuna, the curses had just seemed to be getting weaker and weaker. He would follow this lead, hoping that this curse was stronger than all the rest. Yuji would begin his own investigation, while the Jujutsu sorcerers would also be investigating the same thing, not realizing. Yuji would also realize that the Jujutsu sorcerers were also hunting the same curse that he was hunting, but instead of making his move first, he would simply let the sorcerers track down the cursed spirit. Everything would go pretty much as they did with Kanon, but replace Yuji with Megami and Nobara. They would get close to Junpei, trying to be friends with him, as the curse would be manipulating Junpei, trying to get in his head so he could do his bidding. Yuji not realizing that Kenjaku had planned out this entire thing. He wanted Yuji to ingest more fingers, so he had planted one at Junpei's house. He was hoping that the Jujutsu sorcerers would realize that one of Sukuna's fingers were in the vicinity, and in doing so, they would grab the finger, and this would allow Yuji to take the finger without anybody else intervening. But little did Kenjaku know that the plan that he had all set out was not about to go the way he intended it to. After Junpei's mother had died, Mahito would take the finger, hoping that it would lure Yuji towards him. He wanted to see what this Yuji Itadori was about, since Kenjaku was always hyping him up. He couldn't be all that great. As the next day would come about, Junpei would realize that his mother was dead. He would go to the school to begin his revenge, and Mahito would lay the veil over the school. Megami and Nobara would get inside of the veil. They would make it towards Junpei and ask him what he's doing. He would tell the two that he wants to kill those who's cursed him, with both of the freshmen telling Junpei that even if he were to kill those people, his life wouldn't feel good, and they don't think that his mother would want that. Junpei would ask them what they know, at the same time trying to attack them. This would go on a while until they would reach a stairwell. This is when Mahito would have walked down the stairwell, greeting both Nobara and Megumi. Megumi would immediately realize that this was a cursed spirit they had been looking for, immediately summoning his demon dogs. Nobara would get her hammer ready and tell Junpei to back away from the curse. Junpei would try to tell them that Mahito is a good person, but without listening to Junpei any further, Megumi would send his demon dogs onto Mahito. But to Megumi's surprise, Mahito would have transfigured his demon dogs, sending them back onto Megumi. Megumi would be shocked, feeling his demon dogs die as they would be turned back onto him. He would dodge out of the way, and Nobara would ready her hammer, sending nails straight at Mahito. Mahito would take the nails head on, with Nobara telling him that he shouldn't have done that. Just then, she would activate Hairpin. It would blow Mahito up, but he would just reform himself, telling both the sorcerers that they were a bad matchup with him. He would attempt to rush in to attack both the sorcerers. However, just as he would be about to attack Megumi and Nobara, Yuji would jump in through a window, kicking Mahito in the face. Mahito would laugh and say that the attack had caught him off guard, but it wouldn't do any damage to him. Just then, Mahito would have begun bleeding from the nose. Yuji would look over and see the two sorcerers as they would both ready themselves, thinking that Yuji was going to do something. But Yuji would simply laugh, mocking them for being as weak as they are. A lot of time has passed, and the only one that's even decently strong is Megumi. Nobara would get irritated hearing Yuji say that, but she knew she couldn't do anything to him. Yuji would tell the two that he would deal with them later, but for now, he's gonna take on this curse and they better not get in his way. Megumi would kiss his teeth, knowing that Yuji was right. Mahito easily took down both of his demon dogs, so Megumi would tell Nobara that they would simply get Junpei and get out of there. Both of the sorcerers would grab Junpei and begin to run. Before they would leave, Megumi would tell Yuji, "Don't think that this means you've won," with Yuji smiling. Yuji would then stare back at Mahito. He would be deep in his head thinking. He knew that this was Sukuna's vessel, but he didn't know that he was able to see the contours of his soul, and that one kick alone was ridiculous. Even though the kick caught him off guard, Yuji wasn't using his full strength, and it did that much damage. Mahito would then begin to smile. It was a fight where he had to put his life on the line, and he was getting excited. As the fight would start, Mahito would begin to throw up a bunch of transfigured humans, throwing them at Yuji. Yuji would call Mahito disgusting. As the transfigured humans would begin to swarm Yuji, Mahito would rush in, attempting to get an attack off. He would turn his hand into a blade and begin slashing at Yuji. Yuji would dodge the attacks while throwing transfigured humans into Mahito. He would attempt to slash horizontally at Yuji's face. Yuji would duck underneath it, dropping to his back. Then he would swing his body, getting back up, leg sweeping at Mahito. This would cause Mahito to fall, and Yuji would capitalize off this moment. He would attempt to end the fight early, trying to spear Mahito in the head. But Mahito would then begin to compress his body, causing Yuji to miss and hit the ground. Just as Mahito would do so, he would then begin to expand his body, with spikes coming off of it. With Yuji's hands still on the ground, he would lift the ground up, using the rubble to block the attack. Mahito would then return his body back to his original state, rushing back at Yuji to re-engage in hand-to-hand. Mahito's best bet to beat Yuji would be to attempt to transfigure him, but anytime he would try to engage with Yuji, he wouldn't be able to touch him. Yuji was too fast, either dodging or parrying every attack that Mahito would attempt to throw. Mahito had to think smarter if he wanted to be able to defeat Yuji here, so instead of spreading out all of his transfigured humans, he would recapture them, merging all of them together. This would create a slim-looking transfigured human, and its arms would have had blades along the edges of him. Mahito would then tell the transfigured human to go, as it would begin to sprint at Yuji. Yuji would be caught off guard with how fast the transfigured human was, but he had to dodge every attack that the transfigured human sent at him, just barely dodging some attacks, knowing that if he got hit by those blades, it'd probably damage him quite a bit. As Yuji would continue dodging the transfigured human, Mahito would attempt to come behind Yuji with blades of his own, with both the transfigured human and Mahito slashing at Yuji. He would jump over both of the attacks, kicking both the transfigured human and Mahito in the face. As the transfigured human would be dazed, Yuji would begin to prioritize Mahito over the transfigured human. He would begin to combo Mahito. He would begin with 2 quick right jabs, rocketing forward with a strong left hook. Mahito would attempt to send an attack of his own, however Yuji would simply duck underneath it, grabbing Mahito by the arm and slamming him on the ground. Before Mahito could even get the chance to think, Yuji would already be sending a hammer kick towards him, caving his chest into the floor. After that attack, Mahito knew that he needed to gain space between him and Yuji if he wanted to survive, so he would attempt to transform himself, but Yuji would not let him. As Mahito would begin to shrink smaller, Yuji would send another kick towards Mahito, slamming his leg into the curse as he was trying to transfigure himself. Just then, the transfigured human would come up behind Yuji, attempting to slash at his back, but Yuji was already paying attention to this. He would swing around the cursed spirit, sending 3 devastating punches into the curse's back. Wanting to finish off the transfigured human right here and now, he would charge back his fist, pouring as much cursed energy into it as he could, as he would send the punch towards the transfigured human. The second it would make contact, the transfigured human would explode, but this would allow Mahito to regain his footing. Mahito would then tell Yuji that he just loves how they're fighting right now. Both of their lives are on the line, and they're fighting to the death. There isn't a feeling that's more exhilarating than this. Mahito would stare down Yuji, and then say, "Domain expansion, self-embodiment of perfection." Mahito would have been able to capture Yuji in his domain. However, Yuji would simply look around and say, "What the hell was this?" Mahito would then tell Yuji, being on the verge of death, he unlocked this. Even though it cost majority of the rest of his cursed energy, he would end this fight here and now. But just as Mahito would think he had victory, Sukuna would then tell Mahito, "Why are you trying to disturb my soul?" sending a slash towards him, telling him to get out. This would cause the domain expansion to shatter almost instantly, with Yuji simply staring in confusion. Mahito would laugh. He would then use the rest of his cursed energy, pushing out the rest of the transfigured humans he had stockpiled. He would use the transfigured humans as bait so he could get away from Yuji. Knowing that this was a losing fight, as he would be getting away, he would tell Yuji, the next time that they face each other, Yuji will die. He'll become much stronger, and Yuji will regret making an enemy out of him. Yuji would simply sigh and call Mahito a coward for running away, dealing with the rest of the transfigured humans. Just then, Megami would reappear, with Yuji noticing him instantly. He would turn around and ask Megami what he wants. Megami would then ask who the hell Yuji was. Yuji would tell him that he's simply someone who wants to get stronger in order for him to be able to fulfill his ideals. Megami would then ask Yuji what exactly are his ideals. Yuji would then stop and look up. He would then begin to tell Megami that he doesn't think that the Jujutsu Society should be ran as it is right now. He was told that the higher-ups in the Jujutsu Society prioritize tradition and control over progress. They dislike those with power because they view it as a major threat. They killed someone who was close to him simply because they feared the power that he possessed. They try to reinforce rules and make things go the way that they want, even though they are weak themselves. Their actions stem from fear of threats to their power, and it's not necessarily justice. Yuji tells Megami that he wants to dismantle the Jujutsu Society, restarting it from the ground up, to where those who are strong are actually in power, instead of it being run by old people who have no idea what they're doing. Megami would then ask Yuji what exactly does he plan to do, with Yuji telling Megami that his only goal is to simply get stronger. He would get as strong as he could, so where no one else could question his ideals. Megami would then ask Yuji, is he their enemy? With Yuji replying, only if you get in my way. He would tell Megami that he used to be on the other side at one point, but he didn't like how they operated, so he decided to branch off and do things his own way. Megami would then ask Yuji, why won't he come to Jujutsu Tech then? Things aren't run the way you think they are. With Yuji telling Megami that he simply doesn't want to get ordered around. He wants to do as he pleases. Just before Yuji was about to leave, he would tell Megami he has a lot of potential, and he could get even stronger than him if he really trained hard enough. He's pushed his body to the absolute limit, breaking himself over and over. Megami needs to be greedy if he wants power. That's how Yuji got where he is right now. The next time they see each other, he won't be so nice, so get as strong as he could. Yuji would then leave, leaving Megami to ponder on his own ideals, thinking about how he could get as strong as he could. Yuji might be a problem in the near future, so he needed to get strong enough in order to face him. In the background somewhere, Kenjaku would have been smiling and laughing, seeing how strong Yuji had gotten by himself. In that moment where he was fighting Mahito, he was kinda scared that Mahito would have died right then and there, but thankfully he survived and he'll be able to use Mahito for his plan later. He would then begin to talk to the disaster curses, asking them how they would go about their plan to steal more of Sukuna's fingers. Kenjaku wanted as many as he could so he could plant more for Yuji to only get stronger. The faster Sukuna was able to get released, the faster their plans would be able to come into fruition. Everything was going along smoothly for Kenjaku. As long as Yuji wasn't on the side of the sorcerers, they could do whatever they wanted. He would plan to grab the fingers and other special grade cursed objects for Yuji to attempt to consume, getting him as strong as he could so he could be the perfect vessel for Sukuna. When all was said and done, they would be able to tear down this world and build it back from the ground up, making curses the true humans of this world. Meanwhile, Yuji would be somewhere killing off some grade 1 curses, talking about how boring things were getting. Sukuna would then tell Yuji that he should probably go to the Jujutsu Academy. Yuji would ask him why, but Sukuna would only say it's just a feeling. Sukuna really only wanted to see what that Megami boy was capable of, with Yuji telling Sukuna that maybe it would be a good idea since Kenjaku planned on infiltrating the Jujutsu Academy. He would be able to infiltrate as well, and maybe fight some special grades while he's at it. It'll be a win-win for both of them. During the downtime, Sukuna would have been teaching Yuji about his technique, telling him that it's been engraved in Yuji's body as well since he absorbed his fingers. While waiting for Kenjaku to go ahead and infiltrate the Jujutsu Academy, he would be training with Sukuna to be able to use Shrine. Sukuna would always be unforgiving in his training, but this one would be even more grueling than the last. If Yuji couldn't keep up, then that was on him. He would drill the usage of Shrine into Yuji's body until he was able to use it. There would be non-stop training every day, only stopping for Yuji to either get something to eat or rest. By the end of their training, Yuji was able to use Shrine, but it was very weak. He was able to use Cleave and Dismantle like Sukuna, however, the slashes were incredibly weak. However, Yuji would realize whenever he hit something, it was like every punch would have miniature slashes, cutting whatever he would hit. Yuji would be okay with this progress, but Sukuna would tell him that it wasn't enough. He needs to be greedier. So Yuji would continue training until the day of Kenjaku's infiltration on Jujutsu High. Everything would go almost the same in the Kyoto Sister School Goodwill event, except for the fact that Yuji wasn't there, so Todo would be dominating majority of the team fights. Until eventually, a veil would have been placed over the school event, and Hanami would be the distraction for the others to be able to steal Sukuna's fingers and other special grade cursed objects. Yuji would be near and see the veil that was dropped over the academy. He would smile and run over as quickly as he could, saying that it was finally time for him to be able to act. As he would get there, he would think the barrier would keep him outside, but to his surprise, he was able to walk through with no trouble at all. Yuji would hear action in the background and try to go towards it, but to his surprise, he would see the Jujutsu sorcerers taking on Hanami and actually winning. It would be Maki, Megami, and Todo going against Hanami, with Todo taking the lead, as Todo's technique would be overwhelming Hanami, and with Maki being a powerhouse using Playful Cloud, while Megami will be using his newfound Shikigami, the Divine Dogs being combined with Nue, while also using his Giant Snake, keeping Hanami at bay. Yuji would be impressed with the trio, especially Megami, seeing that it wasn't that long since he told him to get stronger. But just then, another cursed spirit would come into the fray. This being Jogo. He would immediately attempt to go for Megami, seeing as he was the most dangerous one. Todo would use his technique, getting Megami out of the way. Switching his place with the rock, he would tell Megami that things have gotten a little bit more dangerous. He doesn't believe that they'll be able to take on two special grade cursed spirits at the same time. Just then, Yuji would jump down from off of a building he was watching on, kicking Jogo in the face, sending him launching. This is when Megami would be confused, asking Yuji how the hell he was there, or when did he even get there. Yuji would smile and tell Megami that he should be thanking him instead of questioning him. He just saved their lives, with Megami saying whatever. This is when Todo would ask Megami who that was, with Megami telling Todo that for right now, think of him as their ally. He didn't need Todo picking a fight with Yuji right now. This is when Jogo would get up from being kicked. He would scream, asking Yuji why the hell he's interrupting them. Yuji would tell Jogo that why does it matter, he's not on their side anyway. He simply wants to get stronger, and Jogo is pretty strong. He would tell the other three to keep taking care of Hanami, and he'll take care of this one. Jogo would then get pissed off, seeing as Yuji was not taking him seriously. He would tell Yuji what makes him think a brat like him will be able to beat someone like him. He'll kill Yuji, and then kill everyone else here. And when it's all said and done, he'll force Yuji to eat the fingers, and give Sukuna complete control over his body. With the other students hearing this, they would be surprised. They had heard that some crazy Jujutsu sorcerers had ate Sukuna's fingers and became a vessel for him, but they didn't know it was Yuji. Yuji would tell Jogo that he can try if he wanted to, but he's gonna die here. He's gotten a lot stronger since the last time they've seen each other. This is when Sukuna would make a mouth on Yuji's face, telling Jogo that he'll make a deal with him. If he was able to kill Yuji right here and now and give him more of his fingers, he would honestly help in whatever plan that they had going on with Kenjaku, telling Yuji that he'd better survive if he doesn't want things to go awry, telling them that this will be a fight to the death that both of them need to enjoy. Yuji would then begin to smile, as Jogo would look at him with a dead straight face, as the trio would continue their fight with Hanami. Yuji and Jogo would begin to rush at each other. And I think that's where I'm going to end off part 2. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for listening. And yeah, if you didn't know, the Discord server is up. It's on my channel. And also, I post a post about it. So it's there as well. You only have 7 days. But if you don't get the chance to enter it, I can just post it again. So it's no big deal. But yeah, thank you for listening. Thank you for the support. Thank you for 1K subs. I really appreciate it so much. And yeah, peace.